Welcome back to Downloadable Content. We are SJ.
And Alex Herschel. Today, we finally discuss The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Let's get into it.
Herschel. Herschel. Herschel.
Like we said, before we get into anything, we are discussing Tears of the Kingdom today. If you have not finished the game, we're going to talk about stuff that happens pretty much throughout the entire game. We're going to talk about all the dungeons, which go pretty much throughout the entire game. So if you haven't finished yet, we recommend pausing the episode, coming back when you've finished it. There will be spoilers about the dungeons themselves in this episode.
Yeah, and we'll give a last minute heads up too, right before we start talking about it. Because first, one of our listeners, Zaruma from our Discord channel, wanted to hear an update on your honeymoon, because obviously now you're back.
I'm back. I am married. I went on my honeymoon and I am back. And the honeymoon was awesome. We drove out to Oregon. We had an Airbnb in Eugene. On the way out, we split the drive up. We drove to Boise the day after our wedding, and stayed there for the day, and then finished the drive. So it was about 4 hours to Boise from where we were, and then another 6 to get to Oregon. By the way, that drive is incredible because you spend the last hour and a half going through Willamette National Forest. It's a super twisty drive through these super tall pine trees, lakes out on every side.
Oh my gosh.
As I was driving, I was like, this is one of the only places where I am actually tempted to get a motorcycle. Because I'm scared of motorcycles. I'm probably never going to drive one. But as someone who owns one, that's the type of drive that I would want to make if I was in your shoes.
Love to do that.
It's just like an hour downhill just through these twisty turns, and it is so cool.
Hey, one day, maybe.
One day, dude.
You can join the crew.
So the drive out was super fun. We stayed in Eugene, Oregon, which was way different than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be way more urbanized.
Now, where is that? Is that on the western side?
Yeah, so it's more towards the west. It's about an hour away from the coast.
Okay.
And more on the southern half of the state. You've got Portland up north, and then
Gotcha.
Eugene's down south. But super suburbanized, really small houses, lots of trees. You don't really have tons of industrial buildings around. The only ones you really see are hospitals and then the University of Oregon campus buildings, and that's about it.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah, it was super cool. Our Airbnb was this little, I say cabin because it's listed as a cabin, had full plumbing and everything, but just this little space for just us. We spent a day out on the coast. I'll be sure to post some pictures of some cool stuff that we saw there. Hiking around. We did another day where did we go on that other day? There was some other scenic place that we went.
Somewhere in Oregon.
Yeah, it was cool. And while we were there, my wife loves race cars. And Gran Turismo was doing special previews. To the point where if there was no danger associated in driving cars, her dream job is to be a race car demo driver.
That's awesome.
To test out new models and stuff.
Cool.
So we saw about Gran Turismo, which was cool. It's a good game.
Wow.
Well, good movie based off of a game, based off of a real life event surrounding the game.
It was actually good, huh?
Yes.
It's an entertaining thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not a
It's
deep story.
It's nothing that's gonna blow you away.
Yeah.
But it's fun. The race car scenes are super fun, and they make it. They mix So basically, what happens is there's this years ago, Nissan came out and said, one of their marketing directors was like, "What if we took Gran Turismo players and gave them a chance to be real race car drivers?" Based off of how realistic the game is, let's let them see what they can do. And so you follow this guy as he goes through like the competition phase of that, and then, ends up actually becoming like a Formula One race car driver.
Wow.
But it's really cool how they like visualize that, because there are moments where he's driving, and like when you play Gran Turismo, you have like this track line that appears in front of you to follow. That's like the best possible course of action. Right. And like there are moments where they go to his perspective, and that's what he sees, or moments where as he's driving, like the car around him kind of like separates, and he's able to think about like, okay, well, these are the parts that are in my car based off of what I know from Gran Turismo. This is how the car is going to handle, because it's my first time ever driving it, and like seeing how it reacts and stuff. So they like make the game functions in the movie work really well.
Interesting.
Compared to how video game movies tend to be.
I kind of want to see that then. That sounds cool.
I'd recommend it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'd recommend it.
Okay.
It's a good one. Good movie. So, but yeah, we did that, and then we drove home. We drove home in one day, which was not recommended. 12 hours of driving in a day is a no-go. That was rough. But yeah, hopefully that was enough. If you want to know more, let me know, and maybe I'll post some stuff in the Discord for you.
We are happy to have you back. Is it weird to say your wife now?
I love it. I eat it up.
Well, yeah.
No, I eat it up. I love saying it. It's like one of those things where it's like, this is my wife. Like I just,
not fiance,
I like it.
not girlfriend.
Nope.
Wife.
She's my wife now,
yeah.
And I like it.
So we actually just recorded a quick update on our gaming status, because there's quite a bit. We're not going to talk about it here because we don't have the time. But if you want to hear about it, you are welcome to sign up to our Patreon. That is in the description of the episode. And currently we now have 3 patrons. So, but okay, here's your final spoiler warning. We are about to discuss Tears of the Kingdom. Spoiler stuff. If you haven't beat the game, you should turn this off right now. Go listen to all of our other episodes, and then come back when you've beat it. All right.
Let's do it.
Okay.
What do you think of the dungeons overall?
I like him. Honestly, a little less. Like, I think my expectations were a little bit higher. Just because they specifically said publicly, hey, traditional dungeons are back. I don't know if they used the word traditional. That might have just been my own misinterpretation. I like them much, much better than Breath of the Wild, for sure. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. Again, as someone that doesn't, I've said this a few times before, but I don't require intricate dungeons for me to enjoy it. There's a lot of other things going into a dungeon that make it an enjoyable experience for me. So I really liked it. I think it's a really solid collection overall of like consistency in the quality that you face. Like there's only one dungeon in there where I'm like, when I replay Tears of the Kingdom, inevitably I'm not really looking forward to doing this again. But outside of that, I'm like, yeah, I'd totally be down to go for round 2 on it.
So the dungeons that we are counting as dungeons are the 4 main dungeons. So you've got the wind, water, fire,
and sand, Gerudo,
lightning. Whatever. Is it lightning temple?
Lightning,
I think. And then the spirit temple in the depths. And then we're also counting Hyrule Castle itself as a dungeon, when you are on your way chasing Zelda in there to eventually fighting the Phantom Ganons and stuff. Which one do you want to talk about first? Is there a specific one you talk about?
Yeah, I want to start with the one that I don't like.
Okay, let's
just
go
to get it out of the way. Can you guess which one it is?
If I had to guess, fire? Okay.
Yeah, I don't like it. I think both of the dungeons that take place in the depths are the weaker dungeons in the game. But with the fire one, I was like, okay, the scenery around the idea is really cool. Like, okay, we're in Death Mountain again, right? It's been a while since they've done a dungeon in Death Mountain. But I didn't like how it actually came out where it was just a bunch of going around on go-karts. Or if you wanted to like cheese your game just using Ascend and going through like the ceilings of the temple.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a very gamified dungeon in a way where it doesn't really feel as well crafted as the other ones. That was my main thing, is I was just like, this just feels like the dungeon that had less success and what they were going for me.
That's understandable. I liked the carts. I thought it was fun. But yeah, if I had to pick the one that I thought was the weakest one, I don't know. It still may not be the Fire Temple. So like, there's a few things to consider, because there's like the things that you have to do to get to the dungeon itself as well. And in my mind, that's kind of part of the whole experience. So like when you get to the Wind Temple, for example, when you're bouncing on the ships and stuff, I count that as a part of the dungeon. So my least favorite is probably the Wind Temple. But let me just say that I still like the Wind Temple. So like it just goes to show that they're all high quality. But if I had to pick my least favorite one, it would be the Wind Temple.
Interesting.
The reason why I like the Fire Temple more is because, like, and we're not talking about bosses, to be clear. We're gonna have to have a separate episode on bosses. We're just talking about until you get to the boss. The Wind Temple is so straightforward and easy. Like, I just find the 4 terminals or whatever, which are super easy to find, and then I use, I have Tula and just blow some air on it, and then it turns on. Like, okay, cool. There really wasn't much else to it. You just go to 4 different parts of it, you do that, and then it's done.
So out of curiosity, since you were talking about the lead up to temples, what did you think of the lead up to climbing to the Wind Temple?
That's the part that makes me like it more.
It's
I thought the lead up to the temple is fantastic.
So cool.
And the temple itself was like, oh, okay. This felt like a Breath of the Wild shrine. Just with a different theme. So if it weren't for the lead up to the temple, I would say that I didn't really love the Wind Temple.
Interesting.
But the Fire Temple, like, I thought the lead up to it was cool, although like not as involved as the Wind Temple, obviously. I liked the carts just because it was fun, and I liked the environment and how things looked, and how like the walls and things were lit up by the lava and everything. It actually took some critical thinking for me to figure out what I needed to do to go to each level in each area and stuff. I didn't really cheese everything. I knew I could have cheesed it with like my hover bike, but I didn't do that because like, no, like I want to like figure out a temple. This is like an actual puzzle for me, and I'm enjoying it. So, but I can totally see why it wouldn't be your favorite.
Yeah, just didn't really vibe with it. And just to add my thoughts on the Wind Temple before we move on, I think the lead up to it is the strongest in the game. I think like the actual getting to the temple is better there than in any other part. And yeah, the dungeon is pretty simple for the most part. It's not very difficult. You just kind of go around the ship. I do kind of have a thing for like pirate ship type stuff. So like I still kind of enjoyed it. But yeah, as far as like figuring it out, it was not difficult in that way at all.
When you said pirate ship, that reminded me. All right, can you think of the same temple I'm thinking about? Like peak pirate ship temple dungeon gameplay
In Skyward Sword?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That temple's so good.
It's so good.
So good.
All right, let's move on to the Water Temple. What do you think of the Water Temple?
I liked it.
I did too.
My only problem is the way you find the path to the water temple.
The teardrop.
Oh my gosh,
the teardrop puzzle.
Like that was the only thing that I had to look up.
Mm-hmm.
Like I haven't had to look up anything else, and I don't like looking things up because I kind of feel like I'm cheating, and I want to figure it out by myself. But I couldn't for the life of me. I went up to the little like floating fish island thing, and I was looking around everywhere. I cleared off all of the mud that was all over the place, and I'm like, what am I missing here? And I Googled it and looked it up, and it's like, well, if you stand at this specific spot and look at this specific angle, there's a teardrop, and then you have to shoot the king scale through the teardrop. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know. Maybe I was just dumb. A lot of people seem to have figured it out by themselves, so I was probably just, I don't know. But the temple itself, I liked it. It was
I did
good.
too.
It required a bit more thinking to get around to everywhere.
So, in my opinion, the water dungeon was actually like the easiest as far as like puzzle solving for me.
Sure. That's true. It was.
But one thing that I really like is like I really liked the areas in the game where like your gravity is like way less, so like your jumps are a lot floatier. Because I just liked how you can move, and that like completely changes how you can go about fighting enemies. Because you'd be like, well, I can jump from 20 feet away when they can't see me and just absolutely destroy the heck out of them with one jump. And so I really liked that aspect of it. I think that the Zelda team has learned at this point that in order to make a good water temple, you have to have water-based puzzles, but not water-based movement.
Yeah, don't make you go underwater.
Like if you're having to move through water a lot, that's a mess. And so I really liked that. I will say we're not discussing bosses much here. I hate that boss. That's all I'm gonna say.
That's my least favorite boss.
We'll talk more about that another time.
But I
hate that
100%
boss.
agree.
I don't like that boss.
I agree with everything you said about the water temple. Like,
great.
That's the thing that stands out is that there is thematic gameplay throughout the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Like, before you even get to the final boss. And that, I think, was my main issue with the Wind Temple, is that there really wasn't anything special in terms of gameplay that happened while you went around to the different spots. But like you said, like the floating water bubbles and everything and all those physics-based puzzles that only take place at that dungeon, it really made it special.
And think about how they made it so like it's like you're moving through water, but you're not having to deal with water, right? As you're jumping around and free floating,
right?
It's like you're moving through water, but you're not.
And it's not taking away movement options from you. If anything, it's enabling you to do more things than you otherwise would be able to. So
I like that one a lot.
Now Lightning Temple I think is my favorite of all four. I love the theme. It immediately reminded me of the Spirit Temple from Ocarina of Time in terms of just how the background music was and how it felt and everything. The puzzles, I think, were the most enjoyable for me to solve. It had the right amount of difficulty. You couldn't just ascend through everything. I guess you could if you use like, if you built something out of Zonai pieces and then you went through that and then went through the ceiling, you could cheese it, but it wasn't as obvious. And yeah, that one felt the most like a traditional Zelda dungeon than any of the other ones, primarily because I think the environment that it placed you in was the most restricting if you weren't trying to cheese it.
Yeah. I have really mixed feelings on this one.
Okay.
And not really mixed. Overall, it's very positive. I totally agree with like the theming and stuff. I love like desert type dungeon things because it makes me feel like Indiana Jones going through. It's the reason that I like Arbiter's Grounds from Twilight Princess so much. And especially in places where like you're not having to deal with quicksand all the time. It's like, okay, again, not taking away how I can move, but still feeling like that. I really liked that. But for the first like half or maybe a little bit more than half of the dungeon, I really struggled because I don't like Riju's power up. I don't like having to
Yeah.
use it to fight so many enemies in that dungeon.
Uh-huh.
But the thing that kind of made that a bit more palatable is that I realized that you can also beat Gibdos by using fire. It's
Any
like
element.
literally any of them, right? So
Any
like I was just
element.
like, okay, I can just use up the hundreds of pieces that I have stored up. I don't have to wait for Riju to charge up and hope that, in taking down 20 enemies, it's not going to take me forever. I
You
can
could
just
also use Sidon or, a bow.
exactly.
Yeah.
So once I kind of figured that out, I was like, oh, I was working within my very limited mindset, and it wasn't the game's fault. So I had a less than enjoyable experience for a good chunk of the dungeon, but afterwards realized, oh well, there was no need to do that. So I don't put that at fault of the game at all.
Right. Okay.
Again, not a huge fan of that boss fight. I don't love it, but overall, dungeon's pretty good. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, that boss fight was definitely in top 2 for me.
Interesting. We're gonna have to talk about it because
No, I like that one.
okay.
Shadow Temple or Spirit Temple. I'm sorry.
Spirit Temple.
I liked it. It was a very different experience from the other ones
Mm-hmm.
for obvious reasons. You still go to 4 different places, but you were trying to figure out how to get this piece from A to B, and I don't know. It was good, and the puzzles were fun.
I think it's the most unique Zelda dungeon ever because, like, every Zelda game kind of has their gimmick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is, like, the main one that I can think of that's, like, this is a dungeon that could only be done in Tears of the Kingdom because it's so based around Zonite devices and using them.
Yeah.
Where, like, I really enjoyed it because, it was a very fresh experience, not only just within Tears of the Kingdom, but within, like, Zelda in general. Like, I've never had another dungeon experience like that. So I liked it.
And, like, there's always dungeons where they want you to carry something from point A to point B to unlock a door, but this one is different in the sense that you're able to augment how you interact with that thing that you're carrying, or even have it be a part of a vehicle or something.
Yeah,
so,
you don't only have one option of how to do it. It's not like you have to work with what the dev said.
Yeah.
The dev said, okay, here's 20 different ways. Choose what you want to do.
But it's not like, even if you were trying to cheese it, it's not the most straightforward, easy thing to cheese either.
No.
So, yeah, no,
you gotta have a pretty
really
good idea,
it.
like the game's mechanics and how it works with different Zonite devices.
Yeah, it forces you to be pretty creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really liked that one
was
as well.
fantastic.
And that boss fight is fun.
Yes.
I like that one.
That was,
I like that
the
one.
cage fight. Yeah, it was pretty sick.
All right. And our last dungeon for today, how do you feel about Hyrule Castle?
Honestly, it is what I expected. It's what I wanted it to be, which is basically like horde by horde combat challenge going through the castle. I didn't expect to be chasing Zelda the entire time, but that's how it got you from one arena to the next, was by having Zelda there to motivate you to get to that point. And I thought it was great. I really liked it, especially because none of the other dungeons really focus on combat. It was nice to, it's kind of like, a way to get you pumped up and warmed up before you fight the boss at the very end, which is Phantom Ganon. And we won't talk about that too much because I think that can go into the boss fight episode we do. But
I agree.
I enjoyed it. How about you?
I really liked it. I really, really liked how they designed Hyrule Castle for this iteration of Zelda, including in Breath of the Wild. One thing that I didn't struggle with, but one thing that I wish they had done more of in Breath of the Wild is promote exploration of that.
Sure.
Because when you go to fight Ganon in that, it's just like, well, if you just get to the throne room, you can go. And none they necessarily say go straight there, but there's also nothing that they do to promote exploring other areas of the castle very much.
Yeah.
And
this forces you to do that. And
exactly,
it gets you
right?
curious. It's like, can I go over here?
And it's never annoying. It the path and where Zelda appears and how they go as you're, starting here and then you move up a floor and then you move back down a floor on the other side. You just get to see a lot of this castle, which is probably my favorite version of the castle that I've ever seen in Zelda. And yeah, I really liked the combat aspect of it. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, like it's go time.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed Hyrule Castle, and even
Mm-hmm.
though it's not really a dungeon, it was one of my more fonder memories from playing through that game. Is like,
It's definitely a highlight of the game for sure.
This is a good part, which is weird because as I've talked to other people about it, a lot of people have been like, "Oh, this was annoying. This was pace breaking. This was just filler because they needed you to do something before the Spirit Temple." And I was like, "Did we play the same game? Like, this is sick." So I don't know. Maybe if you didn't enjoy it as much, feel free to send in your thoughts and help me understand why it might not have been such a highlight for you. But yeah, like I really
Because I mean, without that dungeon, like, what's the point of Hyrule Castle?
right, because you
Like,
don't do your
nothing to
final
do,
you
there's
don't do the
nothing to
final
see.
boss there. You
No.
go down.
And even
then you go
aside
up.
from like the waves of enemies that you fight as you're like chasing after Zelda, like when you're in each area, you get to see like the possibilities and all the different branches and corridors that you can go down to further explore the castle. So it helps the player realize, oh, this place is huge. Like, I need to come back and do a whole bunch of stuff. And there's so many different secret doors you can go into, like chests and stuff you can
Did
find.
you, just out of curiosity, I know that you were kind of pushing through the game near the end, but did you know that there is that secret tunnel that leads right to Lookout Landing? No?
I did. Is it like a actual structure, or is it just like an underground cave?
It's like a structure, like under Lookout Landing, there's a tunnel that leads in, and at one point in the castle, I can't remember if I think it's near the armory, there's a point where you can go down a ladder, and there's like spiral staircases and a lot of different tunnels that lead to different weapons, but the point is that it's like the royal family's like escape route out of the castle if they'd ever gotten attacked. And so you go down into the ground, not into the depths, because you're always covered by like cobblestone, but it's a path that leads out of the castle towards like Lookout Landing and that kind of stuff.
Is that also where you find the royal guard armor, like the metal steel?
I actually never
pieces?
found those pieces of armor in the game. I looked for them, but I never found them.
Because I found all
know.
3 of them right at the beginning of the game. And it took me like, and then as I was playing through Hyrule Castle toward the end of my gameplay, I found a path that connected the two, kind of. So I don't know if that's the same place that you're talking about. It's probably different if you didn't find those pieces. But that's really cool though, that there's that connection there. Yeah.
But yeah,
that's it, right?
those are the dungeons. Hopefully this is. Huh?
Go ahead.
No, hopefully this is satiated. We know that it's taken us quite a bit of time. In fact, it's not the exact day, but it's been 3 months since the game came out, right?
Thanks to me, it's taken forever to get this first Tears of the Kingdom episode recorded.
Because SJ's, actually got like adult responsibilities and like stuff to take care of. So hopefully this has whetted your appetite, maybe resparked your interest in the game if you finished it a long time ago. But we have lots of ideas for what else we want to talk about. We've talked about our boss episode. We want to do episodes on the story. I want to do episodes on shrines, specifically going past dungeons. So we have lots of different ideas for what we can talk about in the game. If there's anything specific that you'd like to hear us talk about, feel free to reach out to us through our social media or email. All of that information is in the episode description.
And thanks again to our patrons. We have now Joshua, Tyler, and Grandpappy. Grandpappy is our newest member. So we love you all. Thanks so much. And even if you're not signed up, thanks for just listening.
We love you. We'll see you soon.